When I hear the name Fat Shark, I immediately start to see red flags because this is a developer who is not afraid to break and make false promises. I'm all for supporting developers and giving them the benefit of the doubt that they can accomplish things, but the real question here is why they opted to backtrack to Warhammer Vermintide 2 as a horde game, possibly due to the community asking for this type of content like 4 years ago perhaps? It's not exactly thriving with an active player base compared to Warhammer 40k Darktide, which has 2,000 players daily, whereas Darktide is a constant 5,000. They haven't even remotely fixed any of the issues with Darktide since that game was released. It leaves you wondering what their objective here is. Revive an old and fun, almost dead game that most people haven't played for 9 years, while games like Space Marine 2 are just around the corner. It's almost like they're scrambling things together very quickly, grasping at straws to figure out what they can do to provide game modes and content to the community. Look, if I wanted to go back to gameplay like this, I would simply return to Left 4 Dead 2 because the parallels here are just way too similar, where the average player base is a solid 25,000 players daily, and it's an actually functional game. There's a reason most choose not to play games under Fat Shark, and it's because that they aren't very well known for communicating with their community and being 100% transparent when it comes to providing for them. Warhammer Vermintide 2 Versus feels like a rushed and poorly designed concept for a 4v4 PvP game mode that came out of nowhere. You'll be playing against other players as heroes and packmasters trying to score points and to prevent those points to win each round. I'm aware it's a playtest, and as they state, it may not represent the full release, but when they say it like that, I can't help but get a lot of whiplash from quotes stated from them prior. There's absolutely no question that a lot of things here need to be adjusted to make it fair for everybody involved, as well as to allow for some meaningful counterplay when playing as either the hero or the pack masters. Everything about this just feels like a complete waste of everyone's time. When you have a character like the Ironbreaker who is practically immortal on his own, and you don't have a Skaven pack master to summon a horde to snatch him off a cliff or just far away from his allies where you can host him up to slowly die, you're kinda out of luck because it's more or less a chance that you even get this choice or even a bile troll at random intervals. If you know what you're doing on either side, it's actually rather unbalanced, particularly for the pack masters on select maps where the heroes have a significant edge. That isn't to say that the heroes have a disadvantage against the pack masters on other maps, because there are many choke points and there are also a ton of exploits that everybody can use. Something as simple as pack masters being able to drag you out of bounds where you can't do anything to them. It felt like the hitboxes were inaccurate, and I just couldn't see the longevity of this idea. It ends up seeming like one of those games where you just play as a 4v4, and if people leave, that's it, the game is over, because as known, their AI design is just to follow you and to attack what is fighting you and nothing else. If the enemy team is nothing but a full bot lobby, you can't play as the packmaster because they don't do anything and the game just automatically ends. Whereas if you're playing as the hero, in this case, there are no threats and the game doesn't end for whatever reason. This is where you realize the hordes alone do nothing and are nothing but paper mache, without players pouncing on you, snatching you, and mowing you down with suppressive fire from the Rattling Gunner. You won't actually have any possible way to play this when the community dies off. It honestly feels like wasted effort that will be abandoned soon. I expected this type of content, something that felt very low effort with a feeling of being copied rather than putting a new spin on things. They did not put much thought into the concept of their packmaster designs, which all identically play as stalkers, chargers, smokers, and other infected from Left 4 Dead 2, just tuned into the design to match Warhammer. This honestly makes it all feel very stale. It doesn't seem like a horde game at all, but rather like a small group of enemies and 4 players mixed within attempting to take you on one by one. There are several builds and playstyles available, but something still feels dated. The horde elements, the visuals as you cut your way through, the mood, or maybe the soundtrack, it just didn't seem like it was all there. And the one thing that I did enjoy was playing as the pack master, since it was actually entertaining, whereas the heroes were kind of lackluster. I feel like a lot was missing from the gameplay, either because you were a 3 or 4 stack fighting one person on the pack master side with no realistic method for them to win, or to get anybody fresh into their game once the game started, meaning that you had already won. So long as you were able to down them and not the bot players, the game is already over. It's a game about teamwork. It is a 4v4 game mode, so without the ability to play as a 4v4 because the bots take up only the hero side and not the pack master side, you spend the vast majority of your time trying to plan out your strategies with your team, if you actually have a team. Even if they did eventually add in AI to take control of the pack masters and heroes in a more controllable way, what's the point if there's no actual players to play against in this PvP game mode? If you're on the pack master side, it's more about doing things together at the same time, picking people off one by one, so you find yourself having to speedrun as the heroes through the initial choke points in order to have a fighting chance, and rarely do you ever make it to the portal because of this. The game pushes specific roles, so you shouldn't have too much trouble deciding which character to play, especially since there are so many classes for each character, each with their own set of unique skills and weaponry for you to experiment with and to find something that you're more comfortable playing with. Though I couldn't really find anything that I could get into. It might just be because I like to play characters with a ton of mobility such as rogues, but everything here felt extremely slow and the animations all felt like they had no weight behind their swings. I can't say that I'm all that surprised really. I can say that I had some fun playing this again, especially with the rest of the community, when it actually matches up with a 4v4 rather than a 2v4, 3v4, or a 4v0. Vermintide 2 isn't compatible with these types of updates, especially around a PvP game mode. This idea should have been buried and forgotten, not because it's a bad game, but because it feels like the whole game would need to be reworked to actually fit the design. And by that point, just make a new game. Fat Shark simply does more harm when they do things like this. They may work long term and be entertaining, but given their track record, it'll just be another worthless feature in a game that few people want to play. I feel like they had this idea for Darktide, but when you think about it, this concept for a 4v4 player horde survival game only really makes sense for Vermintide 2. It just feels like they waste a lot of their time and effort when it comes to focusing on building a new, interesting game that they claim will have included features without making false promises.